Hello and welcome to the behind the scenes of Quiet Extinction. I'm Jacob Shrimpy, or World of Shrimpy on YouTube, and we're going to be taking a look at each scene in depth and talking about the making of process over the course of a week, because this was my entry for the 2025 BRAWL contest, brick film rapidly all week long. Let's get started. So we'll start with the opening shot. So the opening shot for any film, regardless of genre or medium, right, is the opening shot and the closing shot. They're the most important, right? Because it's the first thing that the audience sees and it's the last thing that they see before the credits. So I wanted to put a lot of effort into the opening shot, not only for the wow factor, right, especially since it's YouTube. So regular people watching YouTube videos have very short attention spans. So if you don't grab their attention in the opening shot or the first couple seconds, you're kind of doomed. So the original vision for this shot was for it to be an even grander establishing shot, right, with mountains and stuff, and then it would jib down into a close-up on our protagonist's face. I couldn't figure out a way to do this, at least easily. Main issue I ran into was with lenses, right? There's a minimal focal distance, right? And I could have had a diopter, which I use regularly, but I wouldn't have been able to get the background in focus for the establishing shot. So I ditched that pretty quickly. It also would have been really technically challenging to get the camera to move on a shot like this, since there was so much visual effects that I wanted to do as well. So I sort of canned that idea pretty quickly. There is a fair bit of visual effects going on here. I could have done most of it in camera and had it look good in camera, but just able to take it that extra bit further by doing background, sky replacement, and then adding some extra trees as well. Also the animation, there's a lot of visual effects just to make it more time efficient, right, when it came to the animating process. So whether that's looping stuff, which I did a lot of, and I don't normally loop animation because I found out that it's very difficult because you need a really solid start and end point for it to loop and not sort of jump. So it was really difficult to do that, and I ran into a lot of issues because I haven't done it much. So the windmill is an example of that, right? So I only animated maybe 8 or 10 frames of it going from one blade to the next, right? And then it would loop. But I animated a bit further than that, and I'm glad that I did, because even though everything looks evenly spaced and all the blades are at the right angle, it didn't loop perfectly. So in terms of pre-built stuff, the only things that were pre-built is the windmill and some of the walls for the hallway shot, because that was part of my Cloud City mock that I started to make for a Star Wars project. Everything else I built within the time constraint of the contest. A little bit more about the opening shot before we get into the second shot. It won't be me waffling on for this long about every shot. So the original premise for the film, right, was not taking place in a barn in the opening scene. It was supposed to be in a classroom, because I had the idea of the hourglass and the chalkboard and doing up the math to make the device feasible, right, and grounded in reality. I didn't want it to be some sci-fi thing that's like, oh, it can magically determine how long something has left to live. I wanted it to feel like it could exist in our time, and based off the dates they mention, it takes place in the very near future as well. So the barn came about because I was like, oh, the chalkboard and the hourglass, they're very low tech, right, in terms of like no electricity and very primitive. I wanted to incorporate that into the story, and so then I came up with the idea of the no electricity, right? I took it even a step further, and having the production design and the location fit the not having electricity part. Most remote place, a barn in the middle of nowhere with no electricity, and so that's where the windmill came about, and the lantern, and how does he eat food, right? So he's living off goat milk and canned food. So I started to incorporate that into the world building, and that helped with the set design, and that helped flesh out the opening part of the movie. And I feel like it just works out so much better having done it that way, rather than all of it taking place in the lab, right? And the lab wasn't originally supposed to be a lab. It was supposed to be more old school, more like a university type thing with hallways and rooms with science equipment. But I'm glad that it was more sci-fi, because I love that element and I wanted to incorporate a lot of sci-fi into this. And I'm glad that I could do that with the lab scenes. And then the mod element as well. I'll talk a lot about the mod element throughout. So white and yellow for this one. One thing that really annoyed me was I have a lot of, I don't know what the color code is. I'll put it up on the screen now. It looks yellow, but it's not. It's technically orange. So I couldn't use it in a lot of the mod elements, and I have a lot of those bricks, so it was pretty unfortunate. I'm using it here, right? But there are a couple dotted around of just regular Lego yellow with white. And then the trees and the visual effects, right? So this is an image that I took in camera to get the blurriness, the scale right, and also the colors and the look of it right in camera, so that I know it's very hard to do visual effects or to digitally add something in and have it feel realistic without a reference. So that's the reference image I took for the clouds, and then I duplicated the cloud elements to make this sky. And it's very, very subtle, but the background isn't just a uniform color, it's actually bricks. And that I spent a lot of time on, because you can't just copy paste it, because when you do it on such a large scale, you really see the imperfections, right? And you can see that it's copied. I spent a really long time on this shot. And then the clouds, they move very, very faintly. You almost can't even tell the clouds are even moving, but they are. So yeah, all right, let's move along here. So also background replacement, so that way we could get the same sky in the shot. And then we've also got wind blowing the leaves and stuff. Really shallow depth of field, and it does look cinematic. I didn't want a lot of these shots to be so shallow in terms of depth of field, because first off, it makes it really difficult for the mod element if it is in the background to be seen, and it also makes it really difficult to focus in general, especially if something's moving a lot. But the diopter that I was using with lenses, this is like the second brick film I've made with these new lenses, so a lot of the week was me learning about the best way to use them. And I've really stitched myself up with these lenses in particular, because they're full frame lenses and I'm using a crop sensor camera. So there's a lot of extra stuff that I've got to think about to get the look that I want, right? Because a 35mm lens isn't going to get me a 35mm shot. It was a lot of trial and error. So the diopter that I used to get the camera closer and have the subject in focus really makes it even more shallow for the depth of field. My garage doesn't normally look like this. I normally have my car parked in here, but I paid for a city street parking permit just for BRAWL, so that I could park my car on the street without getting fined instead of the garage, so that I could have double the amount of space. So I was able to have an extra table that I could use just for animating, and the extra space was so good for being able to animate. And then the windmill shot, I really love this shot. I originally wanted this shot to be at the end when it's the montage of a whole bunch of different images and stuff. I wanted this to be there because I put it in a rough assembly cut, and it works so well with the music that I wanted to put it there. But the more I thought about it, the more out of place it seemed, even though it was a cool shot and it felt right. Just had nothing to do with everything else. I couldn't find a way in my mind to make it sort of feel like it fits. Originally, these shots were flipped around, where we had a shot of him first and then the goat. Something in the cut, it just like cutting from sky to sky, it just didn't work. And the leaves in the front that are moving in the wind. Someone commented about this, wondering how I did this shot. And it's really funny because it's literally how I thought about it as well. I wanted to do it in camera, but it just wasn't possible. Being able to key something out like this with such a blurry, undefined edge is impossible, right? Without having artifacts and it just looking like garbage. So I got the shot that I wanted in camera as a reference, and then I photographed the leaves on its own in focus, and then I was able to key that out, scale it up to how I wanted the shot to look, and then I was able to artificially blur it. And the clouds, they're sort of on an angle. I wish it was three-dimensional, right? Because you can sort of see that they're on an angle, but they're so out of focus, it doesn't really matter that much. And the framing as well, I loved having the rule of thirds overlay. I used it extensively when framing up stuff in this. I really loved utilizing that because it works out really well for a lot of the shots. And the windmill is just awesome. I love the design of it. I took a lot of reference images of other people's Lego windmills, and I just love how this one turned out. It's very flimsy though, so I was really worried animating it because the connecting point is very stiff, so I didn't want it to move too much. All right, we get to the barn now. So this shot is the first shot that I did in the contest on day 2, I believe it was. And I just loved the style, right, of the windows and the streaks of light coming in from the windows. So I wanted to replicate that with Lego. Yeah, so happy with how this shot turned out. And I think this is one of the only shots I used the Pro Mist filter on. I wanted to use it in almost every shot, but it was very hard to incorporate it with the diopter because I have to put the diopter on after it, and it doesn't sit really snug on the Pro Mist filter. So I think this is the only shot where the Pro Mist filter is used, which is unfortunate because it looks good. It just, in the highlights, it just looks so much better. I originally had built-in Light My Bricks cables. I have the 2.0 version. They're great. They're so small and can fit inside the tiniest little Lego bricks. I had them rigged into these lanterns in the roof. It looked phenomenal. Only thing is, they're not dimmable, so they're just really bright. And there's probably an accessory you can purchase that you can dim them with, but it was just overpowering the scene, and I couldn't find a way to light it where it looks good and it just doesn't look red. So I decided to ditch them. Also, story-wise, if these are lanterns that he has to light manually, they're not a light switch. How is he going to get up there to do that? And if he had a ladder to do it, would it even be worth doing it? So story-wise, it didn't make sense either. Let's go on to the next shot here. Him drinking the milk was supposed to be later on in this sequence, but it didn't make sense because it would look like he's drinking milk after the goat had been poisoned. I put it directly after this just so it made sense. Like he'd milked the goat and drank the goat milk before the goat was poisoned, so he's not poisoning himself. So yeah, to do the bucket and have the little thing, the sound effect sells it as well. I love how that turned out. This shot's very similar to another one coming up, but I didn't shoot them together. I had shot other stuff and then had to go back to get this shot. I love the background, the out of focus bokeh. It's just, I just love it so much. Anamorphic lenses have that sort of look, but I obviously don't have an anamorphic lens. And to get the effect, there's a bunch of photography people that do the cardboard cutout and put it on the front of the lens, and the effects that they get look really cool. So that's what I've done here, to get sort of like this oval shape in the background. I wanted to use it more often, but again, it's very cumbersome to have on the front of the lens. The lighting and the striking of the match and the lighting up of the lantern, I directly had the framing and the positioning of this shot match when he turns on the Bunsen burner in the science lab at the end. It's a nice parallel that not everyone's going to get, at least on a first viewing. But I love how subtle it is. Just the two different contexts of him lighting this lantern and then later on lighting the Bunsen burner. It's really poetic in my opinion. I love the parallel between the two images and the two different settings. But it's the same action, him lighting it up. Then we get to our first dolly shot. I love doing dolly shots. Yeah, just moving the base plate is much easier than moving the camera to get dolly shots. And so I do it all the time. I love it. And then I've got additional base plates. They're not Lego base plates. They're a knockoff brand of base plate. And it's like a half size. These are great because they're not flat like a Lego base plate. They're raised. It's like got an extra millimeter or two of plastic. So it's great because you can use it on either side, and it's a great method for sliding the base plate that the set is on to get the trajectory straight. All of the dolly shots, at least almost all of them, the animation is done on 2s. So I did the camera movement at 30 frames a second and then the animation at 15. And then all other animation that doesn't have a camera move is 15 frames a second. That's just what I'm used to. For BRAWL, I feel like 12 frames a second would still get a clean looking animation, but saving 3 frames every second would add up over time. You would just get more stuff done much quicker. So, but I'm just used to shooting at 15, so I know that, this many frames is going to be, this movement's going to look this certain way. When I pulled a lot of this in, either the camera movement was too fast or too slow, because again, I'm not using a slider, a programmable slider. That's the way that you should do a shot like this, because it would be more efficient in terms of programming the spacing between, and you could really dial in how fast or slow you want the camera move to be. And it would be easier as well. Like some of the motorized ones are automatic, and so that would be nice. Probably a purchase I'll make further down the line. But even then, I feel like it's too high tech. It would take too long to set up each time you wanted to do a dolly shot. Then we've got the opening of the briefcase. I love how this shot turned out. When I was building this little mini build, I was thinking, oh, this should be good. And then, yeah, once I filmed it in that close up and watching it cut, I didn't even realize, because I'd shot these shots out of sequence. So I just love how it turned out. It looks awesome. And then the sound effect as well. I went through so many. I used SoundSnap to gather, I think, every single sound effect. There might have been a couple that I'd gotten from YouTube because I couldn't find them on the website. But yeah, SoundSnap had so many great sound effects. For the clicking and the opening of the briefcase, I went through all the ones that were on there. There might have been 50. And I found the perfect one. And I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. It just had like that really beefy snap. And it just works so perfect. And then like the leather creaking. Yeah, turned out really cool. And then the picking up of the glass, and then rack focus to him, and he's got the bandana, so that he's not breathing in the poison. Another little bit of subtle storytelling. I love that the opening sequence has no dialogue, and it's a perfect way to introduce you into the film, because there's a lot of dialogue and it's very heavy in exposition and a lot of big words. Yeah, it's great that you as the audience can sort of piece together sort of what's happening based off the opening sequence. It's even better if you have no idea what's happening, because then that sparks your curiosity and you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on here, and you get fed little bits throughout. So I love that element of it. So the drop shot here, I love how this turned out. A lot of the visual effects that I'd done for this, I had done before, masking, green screening, all that sort of stuff. Liquid like this, I'd never done before. So I had to watch a tutorial on how to do this in After Effects, and I love how it turned out. It's animated on 1s when everything else is animated on 2s. So it does look a little weird at the start. So I chopped out the in-between frames in some of the parts. But I love how it turned out, because it's using the reflections of what's around it, right? It's not just overlaid over the top. It's embedded in the image. So a lot of like the reflections on the edge it's taking the image around it, which I absolutely love how it turned out. The fizzling of it and the sound effect that I found for it. The sound effect is sci-fi gun, I think it's called. I think I found that sound effect when I did my THAC entry at the start of the year, because that was very sci-fi oriented, and I browsed through a lot of sound effects for that. I think this was one of the sound effects that I'd found for that project, and it just works so perfectly here. Like, now that I've said it's a sci-fi gun, you probably think, oh yeah, I can imagine how that would be interpreted as a sci-fi like pulse from a gun, but it works so well here. And then the drinking of the water, the taking off of the gloves. I love the shot in the cleaners, Lego stop motion. So, and it's probably been done 100 other times in other brick films of people taking on and off gloves. But the sound effect, again, is what sells it. I did want to do some visual effects to sort of have it not like one piece in front of the other. But I left it in because on this frame in particular, it looks like it's stretched out like it would if they were surgical gloves. But yeah, again, the sound effect is just what makes it so good. And then another dolly shot. Not too happy about this one. In the script I had written, I wanted just this to be the first time that you see all the sciencey stuff on the bench. But I hate this because it doesn't really end on anything. Like, there's usually you'd want it to start on him and then end on something else, another point of interest. But there isn't really that here. But it worked. I just cut the shot early. I animated a lot more to the end of this, but I just cut it out. This, again, the sound effect, it just sells it. Like, when I'm animating it, I'm like, oh, this probably is going to work. I originally wanted a shot of him poking the syringe in the goat and then having a close-up of the syringe filling up and do that as like a big-sized Lego. But in the rules, it says... for the contest, it says no drug references. So I'm not sure if that would count as a drug reference, especially if you saw a shot of the needle going into the goat. Some people might find that a bit graphic. So I decided to not include that. I still feel like it would have been cool because the close-up of the needle filling up or the opposite would look really cool in a close-up. Then we've got microscope. Another one, a different design from the one that's in the science lab. I just love the use of the binoculars. A lot of the reference images from other people's Lego mocks that I looked at used the binoculars piece as the eye piece for the microscope, and it just works so perfect. Like there's not another Lego element piece that would work to make a microscope look like that. Here's another shot that I intended for it to be in a different place in the sequence, but here's just the only spot that I could find for it to go, and it works because this sequence feels very montagey because you're sort of watching the passage of time. So it sort of doesn't feel out of place. It did at first, but works good here. And also the first time you sort of get to see some of the production design in the background. So I'd placed a lot of stuff, just stuff. And a lot of it looks really cool, but some of it you just don't see on camera in a lot of places. The bits of hay as well. I love this tan piece with the lines. It's just the perfect piece for it to be a hay bale. I love it so much. The chalkboard writing. Originally, when I had the script and I wanted it to take place in a classroom, I wanted the opening shot to be of the chalkboard. So we would sort of start here with him doing up the math for the chemical. And he would be testing on rats. That was the original idea as well. Because when you think of animal testing, it would usually be rats. I didn't end up going with it. And I think one of the reasons was that in the script, I wanted the rat to die, right? And how do you do that with the little Lego rat piece, right? Like you could have it turn on its side, but that looks really goofy. Like I don't even need to animate it to know that would look goofy. So the goat works so much better. And then it also plays into the farm location as well. But the original concept was to have the chalkboard be the first thing you see, and it would have the BRAWL logo drawn up as like a chalk overlay, and then he would rub it off with like the duster and then start writing up the math. I thought that would be a really cool way to introduce the film, and then also a cool integration of the BRAWL logo, because a lot of other animators love doing really creative stuff with having it integrated into the set or into the live action element rather than just overlaying the just the image, the PNG. But I didn't end up doing that. I also wanted the BRAWL logo to be at the start with the main title, but it just didn't work. I think one of the reasons was the BRAWL logo for this year, for this contest, was with the colors and the style of it. It didn't fit the theme, right? Like it's sort of like a dark, somber start of the film with him burying the goat, and then the BRAWL logo just didn't fit that. And I could have manipulated it, like made it black and white or done something to make it work, but I just saved the BRAWL logo for the end credits. The close-up of the chalk, this shot, even after redoing it a second time, it still doesn't work for me. I just love that it's short. That's the only thing that is saving it from being horrendous. And I didn't realize when I was animating this, because again, the camera can only get so close to the shot. So this is like cropped in. So it's the diopter. So the camera is close to the shot, right, that I want. But then I'm punched in another like 200, 300% to get this really, really close up shot. So the chalkboard, the bit of Lego at the background actually moves. So I had to 2D track the overlay on top. And then I had to mask around the arm that has the reflection and make the text under that darker. And I had to also mask so that it reveals the drawing as he's moving the chalk along it. So there's a lot of effort that's gone into this shot, and I still don't love it because it's not tracked on perfectly. One other thing to point out is the mod element in this shot is the yellow hand attached to the white chalk. One really interesting thing that I decided to do when I was making the minifigures for this is to make all of the minifigures the skin tone color Lego minifigs. And one of the reasons for that is I didn't know if this concept was going to work as a Lego brick film because it's very grounded in reality and it's very serious in tone. And the goofy nature of the yellow minifig just wouldn't work for that. Yellow minifigs just would have been perfect. So I have so many options for Lego heads and multiple Lego heads at with different facial expressions. But for tan skin tone minifigures, don't have nearly as many head options, right? Our main character is actually Luke Skywalker, because I have 3 different Luke Skywalker minifigures, and they have reversible heads. So I had a total of 4 different facial expressions that I could use. And I originally wanted the hair piece as well, but then it looked too much like Luke Skywalker. Like if you have the minifigure, I've seen it before, you would think, oh, that's Luke. So I swapped out the hair, but I still wanted 2 different hair molds because I wanted something for the beginning scenes where it's a bit more scruffy, and then I wanted a cleaner look for the courtroom stuff and when he's at work. So yeah, I found other head molds that weren't the Luke head molds, and it worked perfect. In terms of the mod element, a lot of people had it really easy in their Brawl entries because it was just have a white torso minifigure and just have the minifigure be yellow, and as long as you have the character in your shot, that counts as a mod element. So I'd made it really difficult on my part by having them not be yellow, because that's one less mod element that I just have. They're all wearing white as well. They're wearing white lab coats, so it would have been too easy. So I've made it a challenge on myself to include the mod element in a lot of shots, especially the close-up shots. And this white chalk piece, I have a lot of Lego that I've intentionally broken. This is one of the pieces just to get a small... I think I've used this as a cigarette before in a previous Lego film, and it works great as chalk in this. I love it. So the hourglass. The Lego hourglass piece, I love it. It's a really cool Lego piece, but it doesn't work. Because if you pause on this shot, you can see what the actual Lego piece looks like. It's sand at the bottom that's completely full, and then it's sand half full at the top, right? So if you have it twisted this way, it doesn't work because that's not how gravity works. So it must sit the other way, right? But then how can the sand fall because the bottom's already full? So using this piece as it is doesn't work story-wise. So I had to find a way to do it as a visual effect. So we've got the visual effect here. This is a combination of many different shots. So I've got the actual hourglass piece, and then I've got 2 clear transparent tubes, like the 1x1 round cylinder. And I've used that so that I could get the reflections of the surrounding environment. And then I was able to use that to paint over where the sand is to get a clean, no sand hourglass. And then I was able to use a particle simulator. And again, this is another tutorial that I had to look at for After Effects on YouTube, because I'd never done this before. I've used the particle effects before, but to do it to get an hourglass sand falling look, that's a tutorial that I followed in order to get this effect. My original concept was to have the particles be the 1x1 round tiles in that tan color, but either animating that from different angles or just having the one image, it just wouldn't have worked. It would have been way too much effort, and it probably wouldn't have looked like grains of sand either. And I have no idea where I found the sound effect. It's very subtle. But sand passing through someone's hand, because I know if you probably had an hourglass, it wouldn't make any noise, like you couldn't hear it. I wanted the sound effect to be there, and it's very, very subtle, but it is there if you listen for it. And then the camera, this is just another extra bit that I've added to the world building, right, with no electricity. So he can't have a digital... He could have just written the math that he'd done on pen and paper. That's something he could have done. The taking of the photo and having him use an old school film camera is really cool. So it would have been a really old school one that has no batteries and stuff for a lot of the functions. Yeah, I love this rack focus shot. And this is another shot that it parallels with the one later on with the digital clock and the electronic board that has the countdown on it. It's another shot where it's framed up exactly the same, and it's the same shot with the rack focus, but it happens later on. So it parallels, and again, it's the 2 different hourglass and then a digital clock. It's like the contrast there. It's just great for people that catch this on a second viewing and notice that it's the same shot, and it mirrors later on. The math, it's a combination of stuff that I found online, and I had traced over the top of it so that all the different math that I'd found online looks more hand-drawn and it looks consistent. But even though I have no idea what any of this means, I know that I wanted it to be less math and more chemistry-based with again, I have no idea what these are, but like the the atoms or something, or the molecules and the different chemical makeup of the molecules and stuff, and having like all these letters and stuff. I feel like that looked more like something he would be writing rather than just math. So yeah, some math person that knows what some of this is, or some chemistry person, is probably laughing like, none of this makes any sense. So yeah, but the rack focus effect is cool because again, it makes it feel like it's actually written on there. Very difficult to do because of how lenses work. Even though I was twisting the lens regular increments, you can't do that digitally with the blur effect. So I had to manually at each stage try and figure out how blurred it should be on this frame and work from there. If I had time, I would have loved to have done a visual effect on the hourglass because it looks horrible having the regular Lego piece there. But even if I did have extra time, I wouldn't want to do it because to have the sand falling and to do the hourglass replacement on the out of focus shot and then for the increments as it's coming into focus, it would have been an absolute nightmare. And then the goat falling over, I originally wanted it to be off screen or like blurred in the background of this shot on the hourglass. So yeah, and then the hourglass and the bit of sand falling, it's the same bit of animation, but it's different to the final shot because I wanted the final shot to be a lot closer. But the mod element wouldn't have been in the shot. So I'd done a second shot with the mod element in the background a lot closer. And I used that for the ending. And I'm still not 100% sure about how I feel about the bit of animation because you can just feel the mask from the bit of sand up the top. I've timed it so that it disappears when the particles stop falling. I feel like I could have tweaked it a little bit more. All right, so the shovel. I love the shovel shot because just the shot of him grabbing the shovel, there's so much storytelling in just that shot, in my opinion, right? Like you know exactly what's happening just based on that shot. And I love the sound effect too of him grabbing the shovel off there. Even though the character is off screen for a lot of this shot, I'm still animating him walking because when I was animating, I could see that he was in the reflection on the left. So and I've done that quite often in a lot of shots where you've got to animate people off screen because you can tell if it's just a freeze frame. So I tried to limit the amount of that as possible. All right, and then we get to the outside shot of the barn. So it's the same exact shot as the daytime one. I had to reanimate the spinning of the windmill because it was in a different lighting condition. So I couldn't just repurpose it from before. So different lighting setup and reanimating that. The stars, taking a small image of the star piece. There's two ways the star was. It was like front and back. I was able to twist it as well digitally. Adding a slight glow as well. I absolutely love the look of how that turned out as well. And then again, it's even more subtle in this as opposed to the daytime shot. But they are bricks that are copied as the background. It's not just black, uniform black. It's got Lego bricks. And they're to scale as well. Like if this was actually built as a background, I don't have that many black Lego bricks. If you were, it would be to scale. And then the moonlight, it's just the softbox on my light and then changing the color temperature to get this look. I feel like it's still way too bright. I feel like it could have been much darker. And then him shoveling, that's just a couple frames that is on loop and I've just held it at certain moments just to extend the shot out a bit more. I absolutely love the orchestra tuning. It's just one of the coolest sounds ever. So to have that as the text is coming on screen is really cool. So I needed to include that. I originally wanted the sound that happens over the first shot of the device on screen. I originally wanted that sound to be here for the main title, but it worked better on that dolly shot instead later on. The fade-ins are weird. The effect that I put on in Premiere Pro, it wasn't slow enough. I wanted it to be even more gradual. So I brought it into After Effects so that I could keyframe and make it even more gradual for it to fade in. And I feel like I've made it too slow because you can see some bits where it sort of feels a bit like it jumps.
But yeah, I love how it just slowly fades in with the music swelling, with the sound swelling. The opening music, and it's also music that reoccurs later on. It's from a movie soundtrack. I originally wanted some royalty-free audio that I'd found that would have worked for the opening sequence, and it was cello. Really, really cool, like ethereal cello. Because I felt like cello was like the basis of the sound that I wanted for throughout the film. I feel like it felt right. But when I put this on, it just worked much better, and so I went with it. After the barn stuff, went on to animating all the science lab stuff. And I started off with all the stuff that didn't have dialogue, because again, I still hadn't received all the lines from the voice actors, and I had to edit it first before I could start animating alongside the dialogue. So had shot all of this sort of stuff that doesn't have any dialogue, and just leaving all the dialogue stuff until as late as possible in the contest. I love this a lot because, again, it's just still the visual storytelling. Like, you're not told right away what's happening. Like, you've sort of got to piece together that she's on a treadmill. But great introduction to the second character that we see, and I love the outfit too. It's like a racing. I think it's from Speed Racer. It actually might be, but it works well. A lot of the Lego pieces that I have didn't work because the neckline was the yellow minifigure piece rather than a tan minifigure piece, and so I either would have had to color change it in post-production or just live with how out of place it feels in some circumstances. So I love that this worked out well as a different, and you don't even see it on the side. I haven't noticed that until now, so I really just put that piece on just for this shot. The running, I had to use a reference video for this. The walk cycle, everyone knows how to do a walk cycle when it comes to animation, but a run cycle, I'd only done it once or twice before. So from memory, all the different poses and stuff, I was never going to be able to get it and have it look good, because there's a lot of intricacies, especially with the minifigure, because it doesn't have knees and it doesn't have elbows. Yeah, going off of reference video, absolutely essential for this. And then the rig, it was the most fun I'd had doing rig animation, because it just worked. Like, for some reason, the tack, it just stuck on. Like, usually I'm fumbling around and it falls or it's not sitting in the right place. So it worked really well. It was great to mask out as well. It was in a good spot, just the top bit of the hair. Sometimes you've got to attach it to the torso, and the arms moving in and out between it means that you've got to physically mask all the way around the arm, and it's just a lot more time consuming. It was just a joy to work on these couple frames with the rig removal. And then the loop. This is another time where looping animation was just really difficult to do, because I had to get the final frame in the animation to match the first frame. And I did that in camera. I had it in Dragon Frame as a reference, and I was following it very closely, trying to get it to work. And I ended up getting to match pretty well. And the sound effects that I found, phenomenal luck when it came to the sound effects for this. So I think the pace, it had the running pace in the description for the audio track, and it matched up perfectly with the animation, because I'd never thought about that when I was animating it. I'm like, how fast does it have to be to match the sound effect? Because how am I going to have it work? But it just matched perfectly. I got really lucky. And then from the same person that created that sound, they had another one of the microphone closer to the treadmill of the same running pace. So I had the two sound effects that matched for the two different shots. It was just phenomenal luck, because I couldn't find any other pace or any other recordings that just matched. This close-up shot I love so much. I stole it from myself. I used the mod element of the two colors in a really, really tight close-up in my THAC entry at the start of the year, and I just redone that here. And it just works so well. I just love it so much. This was a pain in the butt to do, because in order to change it to the next piece, You have to take it off. I could have just like shuffled it around, taken the top piece off and put it on the bottom. But even though it's the same piece, you've got the little imperfections of the scratches and the reflections and stuff. So taking it off and replacing the pieces and putting it back in the exact same spot, I wasted so much time getting this and getting it to look good. And again, it's another loop, right? So saving time on animation. I wanted to spend more time here in this part of the lab with her cloning research because I thought that was a really cool concept as well. Then we go to this shot here. I love how the fridges turned out. I'd seen someone else in a mock do it with like the transparent pieces, and I wanted to use all the transparent pieces that I had. So I had the 3 different color things, and in story, I like to think that there are 3 different departments, right, that work in the lab. There's supposed to be more characters. Like he mentions, this was actually taken out of the final thing, that he has an assistant, right, that comes to pick up the samples.
My new lab assistant will be in tomorrow to pick up these samples.
I'd taken that line out of the script, out of the final thing, because it felt confusing because you watch her put her sample in the fridge, and so it's not very clear. Like, so you as the audience would probably think that the lab assistant is coming to pick up his samples and hers, but it was an accident. The cup, I forgot the cup in half of the shots that I went back to reanimate in this scene. So I had to crop in the final images even closer so that you didn't realize that she wasn't holding the cup anymore. So I hate myself for that. That was a major continuity error that I'd brought upon myself. But managed to fix, so you don't even notice. There's one visual effect shot here that happens later on. Instead of reanimating this with one less sample that he'd put in the fridge, I'd taken a clean plate and masked around just that part so that there's only one sample on the table. There's so many visual effects shots in this that when you're watching it, you don't even realize the visual effects shots, right? But they serve the story, or they just help to make it look better. I love this shot, the symmetry and just like the shot of the fridges. I wish there was more of this shot because then you get to look at the fridges longer because they just look so cool. I love how they turned out. And I have a little MC Mini back there doing the backlight. They're a phenomenal little light. Probably one of the best purchases I've made because they just get so much use. They're not very big, so you can't really light entire sets. With Lego being so small, sometimes you can light entire sets with them. And they're full RGB and they're dimmable and they work so well here as like this backlight for the fridge. And if we go back to his shot, the fridge door, I had it intentionally closed, whereas in the wide shot, it's all the way open. Here I had it angled closed so that way you could get the reflection of the stuff in the fridge in the glass. It just looks so much cooler. But this thing in the background, I just saw how many of these pieces I had. They're the 2x2 plate with like the curved bit on the end. I didn't realize how many of these I had in yellow. So I grabbed all of them and made this thing. And it looks so cool. I have no idea what purpose it serves. But it's just a really cool thing that I incorporated a fair bit just to get the mod element in. As you can see, all the Science Lab stuff, it's heavily inspired by the mod element with just heaps of white and yellow everywhere. And it worked really well because I could be careless when it came to shooting these shots. I didn't have to always think about how I'm going to get the mod element in because it was just always there. And I did the same thing with my THAC entry at the start of the year. I had one entire set completely just made of the mod element colors. So that way it was just in every shot and I didn't have to think about it. Our next shot is the close-up of her reaching into the pocket and grabbing out the sample. I originally didn't animate this, but I felt like I had to make it clearer. The going into the pocket, again, it's a technique that I've seen heaps of animators do before, and I never get tired of it. It looks so cool, and it's probably the only way that you can animate someone reaching into a pocket. The frame where 1x1 flat rounded piece appears on screen, I swapped out her hand. You can actually see the seam disappear. So it is a different hand piece. It's one that I'd snapped in half. And we use that piece later on for a different shot. But that helps me to get the hand even closer without having that bottom piece in the way. So she pulls out the sample from the pocket. The tilt up is a physical camera move, but I digitally had the camera pan to the right. And the reason for that isn't so that the shot of reaching in the pocket is in the shot. It's so that I could remove the tack from the frame because there's a whole bunch of blue tack to the right. So Instead of like having to remove that in post, I just cropped it out. So that's also why this shot is so close. It's even closer again because she's not holding the mug in this shot. So yeah, it's a really tight shot, and I don't mind it. The rest of the scene plays out from this shot inside the fridge, which I love. I love how it turned out. It looks so good. Because I needed a way for her to be able to get back to where she was, but I didn't want to animate more walking because it's very tedious and time consuming and very annoying. But I'd already shot this shot of the door closing. So in order to get the eye lines right, like she had to not be there anymore. So I just had her walk back off screen. And again, the sound effects helped make that work.
Feeling a little nauseous.
Well, get some rest.
The door closing, love that sound effect so much. This bit of artwork on the wall, I just love artwork on walls. A little inspiration from Severance. I loved watching that TV show, and I love the use of art in it as well. So this bit of art on the wall, this is from my Cloud City mock. So this is the only other piece that was pre-built before the contest. Everything else I had built during the time constraint of the contest. And then the bit in the middle, that bit of artwork, I love that as well. I took that technique from something that I'd seen online from a mock builder that uses it's the car door panel pieces. So that way a minifigure's arms can fit in it when they're in a Lego car. By having them and 2 plate wide brick in between them, you can get this effect. And it looks so cool. And by using the yellow, you get the hint of the mod element, and it just looks so cool. I loved how it turned out. And then the hallway shot, I love how this turned out as well. I did want to digitally extend it, but that just would have been so much more work. So I just took the set that most of the other stuff takes place in and just propped it up and had it in the background there. I originally animated 2 hallway shots, and these are the only 2 shots that I cut from the final thing. And that's him walking with the trolley, and it's like dollying alongside him as he's walking in front of the artwork. And then there's one of him running, and I cut them because they just didn't work. I'd lit it really weird because I did them both blue screen. The blue screen worked pretty well, but the lighting didn't match and it just felt off, probably because I didn't do the shot in camera. So I cut both of those. I love how the courtroom turned out. I absolutely love it. So this dolly shot, I originally planned for this to be later on in the courtroom stuff, probably one of the other times that we come back to the courtroom. And you can tell that that's what I decided because you can see the doctor in the witness stand is actually moving as if he's talking, but he's not actually talking in the scene. So I wasn't sure where I was going to slot this, but it works really well as the opening shot because you just get the whole scene in one and you sort of get introduced that way. The dolly in also works really well because it cuts into this shot and it just works so seamlessly. I love how it works. And then the sound effect and the music. The dolly shot here and the reflection of the lights on the floor. This is another use case of the Light My Bricks pieces. I had the 2 bits of wire sneaking in through a crack in the bricks in the wall and then going into this like torch piece. The lights are so unbelievably small. I can't believe how bright they are and how thin the wires are for them to be able to fit in this small of a Lego piece. But it just adds so much. And I love how it turned out, and especially the reflection on the floor. It just looks so cool. And then we go on to building the courtroom. So it started out on 1 base plate, and then it suddenly became 2 base plates. So I had to grab a blue base plate, as you can see, for the back part. That ended up stitching me up. It was reflecting blue light off the base plate, so I had to cover it up anyway with black Lego plates so that it wouldn't reflect blue onto my set everywhere. I'm so happy with how the back wall turned out. There's a lot of intricate knot details that I decided to include. So yeah, we've got the dolly in, again, animated on 2s, and then we've got this dolly in as well. And the background of this, I stole this from another person's set design, and I also used it in my THAC entry as well, is the Technic beams. And shining light through the Technic beams, especially out of focus, you get these nice circles. It looks so cool. I love it. I love it so much. The design of this computer as well, obviously it's very reminiscent of an hourglass because it's literally called Hourglass. But I just grabbed every different computer piece that I had and built it into this. And I tried to experiment a lot with not snot. I don't know what you would call this building technique. Just like reversing the bricks so that we're building upside down. I went and did a lot of that in this when doing the set design. You can see in the background of this shot the flag. That's a late addition. I'd originally built that for the courtroom, but didn't include it in the wide shot when I did the dolly. So it's just secretly there now. Again, that sort of continuity stuff where you're putting in the mod element. Sometimes it feels out of place, but sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just glad that it doesn't feel too out of place in this shot. All right, so this shot here, I love how this turned out. So this wider shot that has all the people in the courtroom, it's got the police officer off to the side, and it showcases the floor, which I love how the floor turned out. So the big grand windows with my massive softbox outside so that it's lighting evenly through the windows. And then I put Lego trees out there because I wanted something to break up the light as well and also make it look like there's stuff out there. On the right especially, you can definitely see a Lego tree. And then the rays of light. It breaks my heart to tell you that this was a visual effect. This is not in camera. So the rays of light I had added in post. But I tried to make it subtle, and it just makes the shot look so much better. I love the rays of light coming in from the windows. It looks so good. The vocal performances from all the actors is just top notch. I couldn't have done it without them. It's just brought it to a whole nother level. So yeah, I want to thank them all for their contributions to the project. Glenn, who voices the prosecutor, was having allergies.
I do have a little bit of allergies going on, but you know what? I think running this guy like he smokes like 12 packs a day might not be a bad idea.
But because I needed the lines that day, we didn't have much of a choice. So he worked it into the character, and it ended up working really well.
It is said that Project Hourglass could potentially revolutionize cancer diagnosis.
All the stuff in the courtroom, I tried to frame it so that you don't see the handcuffs, right? So that you just think that he's a witness, and you as the audience are starting to piece together, well, why is he in the courtroom and why is he at the witness stand? I don't watch heaps of courtroom dramas, right? So yeah, it was very interesting that I'd written most of this to take place in a courtroom. The reason I did that was when I had the idea and started to flesh it out, there's a lot of stuff that I needed to explain, and I really suck at writing character dialogue. I don't do it much. I find it very challenging to make it seem convincing. And a lot of the dialogue would have been exposition, right? For them to explain what's happening and what has happened. So I decided courtroom was the best setting to do that because I could just have them waffle on for long bits of dialogue about the machine and how it works and what happened, what went wrong. And it feels genuine, right? It's not out of place that they're describing how it works, right? Because it's a courtroom. But if it was a conversation between just two people, it would feel really out of place for them to explain in such depth, about how it works and stuff. So this is the best way story-wise for me to have been able to get the story across without either having really convoluted dialogue between two characters and having it feel like just exposition, or doing voiceover, right? And just having narration throughout the whole thing. I also feel like wouldn't work and just is a lazy way to tell the story as well. So all of this courtroom stuff, it took forever to animate it. There is a lot of looping and there is a lot of duplicated shots that get reused. But for the most part, I was animating alongside the dialogue, which is why I had to wait a couple days to animate these scenes because I needed to wait for all the voice actors to send me their lines and then also edit it together so that I knew the pacing and then could then go and animate alongside it. This shot, heavily inspired from Andor. It's a series that I finished watching recently. Yeah, I just love the visual of them lined up to get tested with the machine. I originally wanted the actual concept to be an overlay, right, where you would just point the device in the direction of someone and above their head it would have a countdown for how long they have left to live. And the original concept was he would do that and everyone would have the same number except for one person, and they'd be counting down and have their number be much lower than everyone else's. That would have been a really cool concept. It would have made it a lot clearer as well from an audience member's point of view to understand the concept and visually as well. But I didn't want to do that because, again, so much of it I wanted to ground in reality and make it believable that such a device could exist. And the heads-up display overlay sort of thing feels a little too sci-fi, a little too high-tech. So sort of branched out from that idea and sort of came up with the idea of just like the computer and an interface similar to what we would expect to see. Again, we've got lights built into the set, and it just looks so good. Having the transparent pieces lit up practically, and then we have the pieces. So a lot of visual effects happening here because I only have 2 of these minifigures, right? So it's a Bomb Squad Lego Clone Trooper, and I only have 2 of them with a high vis like Lego City piece over the top, just to make it look less like it's a Stormtrooper piece. It feels a lot more sterile rather than just wearing plain everyday person clothes. So I feel like it fits pretty well. So I animated it in bunches of 2 and then stitched it together into one shot. And I feel like it turned out really, really well. Then we've got the computer. So many of the visual effects was just digital screen replacement, which is very easy to do. But the more times you have to do it, the more complex it gets because you've got to reposition it and mask it in each time. For the computer on Hourglass, I also decided to make it light up as well for a lot of the shots because it just looks so cool. I originally wanted them to be flashing and doing all that sort of stuff, but it just would have taken so much longer to do that. So this montage of them all getting scanned, right, is something that even now when I watch it, I feel like the point doesn't come across super clear that each of them are getting scanned. So this is the different sample numbers. So we're going through all 50 sample numbers, but they've got the exact same date and the exact same time that they're going to die. And I feel like it's not clear. I feel like the heads-up display or even having a countdown, I feel like having a countdown would have made more sense. Time left to live, and it's like counting down, and all of them have the same number. I feel like doing something a little different. If I was to do this again, I would make it a little bit more clearer visually for the audience. But if you don't get it here, hopefully you do later on when they're talking about it in the courtroom again. But yeah. All right, then we go back to these courtroom shots. I absolutely love how this top-down shot turned out. And I use the top-down shot quite a bit in 2 other places as well in the film. It looks really cool. It's so much better to have great production design because it offers you so many more options for shooting that look visually pleasing. That's one of the things that I strive to do with the production design when I was building the sets for this is I wanted to go over the top for the floors because most people, myself included, just use a base plate or just standard plate pieces to build the floors for Lego sets. It's so boring. Yes, it's much easier to animate, especially if you've got walk cycle animation. But it looks so much more visually interesting to use tiles and to use different colored pieces. And then the floor in the barn, I love the look of the half tile, half stud. It just works really well. Using the 2x2 jumpers though ended up being a real pain because the stud is in the middle of the block. If I have something that I want to click into place, sometimes it wouldn't work, and it's almost impossible to remove it with a brick separator because you've got to remove all the bricks around it to get to it. So ended up being a lot more of a pain. But this floor, I'd seen people do this before. I didn't invent this, right? I just took it from someone else. But I know I wanted to do it, and I'm glad that I found the right spot for it to work. And it just looks so cool. And I didn't do any calculations or math, so I'm glad that it worked out the size that I'd chosen, and then just putting a tile piece at the end to get me that extra plate width to seal off the gap and have it lock into place. I really fluked that. I didn't do any math or calculations. Even counting the cheese slopes, I came really close to running out of cheese slopes when I was coming to the end of this. And you can sort of tell. On the left, I have a lot more of this nougat piece, and there's none on the right side because I just run out entirely. So I didn't really efficiently plan that out. The flickering of the fire, that's just 3 frames of animation on loop, but it works so well, and it looks so good. The reflective part on the it's supposed to be the balance thing. I have no idea what it's called. I don't know, the scale. It's like a old school scale. That's what it's supposed to be. But the reflection on the gold pieces on there, it looks so cool. I love that shot a lot. And then it also saves having to do animation because the shots get a lot boring of the people talking. I originally wanted to do mouth animation. I'd done a lot of it for my Star Wars project I'm working on at the moment. And I've gotten really good at doing it efficiently and quickly. So I wanted to do mouth animation for this. But I would have had to set aside an entire day of BRAWL just to do it. So when I got to, I think it was day 3 or 4, I just had a moment where I was like, I've still got so much left to animate. That's not going to happen. Which is unfortunate because it would have been one of those extra things that grounds it in reality, makes it feel like you're watching a movie and not a brick film, which is what I wanted to sort of do with this project. But yeah, it still works just as fine without the mouth animation, in my opinion. So it would have been really rushed as well. I was thinking at certain points, oh, what if I just had like a basic open and closed mouth animation and just sort of track it on. But it's a decision I should have made a lot sooner if I wanted to do it, because I would have done less physical moving of the characters, because that would have made it easier to track on the mouths and stuff. But once I knew I wasn't doing mouth animation, I sort of was freed up to do more head animation without knowing that I had to put on a digital mouth after the fact. All right, then we go back to the lab. So we've got the plants here. I originally wanted there to be 4 plant samples, but I only have 3 of these dome pieces, these transparent dome pieces. I should have made it a lot clearer that he's testing plant samples. I feel like this shot and then the one preceding it isn't enough to sort of do that. It's also very brief. You're probably not going to read that it says plant samples. So what's happening here story-wise, right? Because again, people that watch this probably aren't picking up that this is what I intended, but he's doing 3 plant samples. This is what he's putting in the fridge at the start of the film. But notice how one of them has a much higher, I have no idea. I don't know. But one of them's different to the other 2 samples. That's because he grabbed from the fridge the wrong sample. He'd grabbed the sweat sample instead of the tree plant sap sample. And I wanted it to be tree plant sap because I feel like that was the closest to human sweat, that if they were in these little sample discs, you probably wouldn't visually be able to tell them apart until looking under a microscope. So yeah, one of the samples is wrong and is going to die a lot sooner than the plants. And so this is him looking through the 3 samples. The microscope stuff turned out so well. It's just backlighting a transparent floor, and I'd used one of my Lego sorting tubs upside down, so that way I had space underneath to put the light. And again, I used the 2 MC Minis that I have. They're phenomenal, and the fact that they're battery powered makes it so that I can do shots like this, because there's no way to sort of sneak a cable underneath and have it sit flat on the table. And then having the camera top down made it easy to animate, and it looks so cool. And again, I'd never done this microscope effect. That's another After Effects tutorial that came in handy, and I sort of followed along with that tutorial to get this look in After Effects of the like the blowing out of the highlights. I don't know. It's like a 3D effect. If you pause and look, like you can see the red on the left and blue on the right. So it's like the 3D sort of effect to make it look like it's in a microscope. And then the blurred sort of edge as well. And this is another one where I used reference images. It's reference video. I think it was only the microscope stuff and the running cycle where I used reference video to help with animating. And the main reason I had reference here is I just wanted the look and the feel and the speed of how it looks under a microscope. And yeah, I'm just glad that I have my Lego collection so well sorted, because I was able to just grab all the plant pieces and all the transparent pieces of a certain color and mix it together to make it look how I wanted it. And it turned out so well. I love it. The little cherry pieces, I wish I had more of them. They're really cool. They look like little cells that you would see under a microscope. I wish I had like 100 of those cherry pieces. They would have looked really cool. But yeah, the combination of the flower pieces and the transparent pieces looks so well. I love it so much. This is another shot that I took from Andor. I love the close-up shot of Cyril, and he's at work and he's got the reflection in his eye of the I have no idea what he's doing on the computer, but you can see the reflection in his eye. So I wanted to recreate something like that, and so that's where we've got this shot with the close-up on the microscope. And the mod element is here. It's in the background. You can see some white and you can see some yellow, and it's like blended together because it's so far in the distance and it's so out of focus because we're so zoomed in here. But yeah, the cropped version of this has a mod element in it as well. This top-down shot, again, I loved showcasing the floor because it turned out so well. There's a lot of visual effects here too, like the screen replacement, and we've got light over here. This isn't the built-in Lego lights. This is digitally added in. I'd taken a second plate shot with yellow light and masked around to get that. And the alarm clock, or not alarm clock, well, it looks like an alarm clock. The just digital clock is beeping as well with the dots in the middle. They're things that people watching this like 5 times over probably still wouldn't pick up on. So I asked myself, why waste time doing it? But it just adds to the production value, and I would miss it if they weren't there. All right, then we're back in the courtroom. This shot of him walking, again, the floor, if you remember it from the shot before, it's all tiled off. There's no studs for him to click into. So I had added a plate underneath for me to do this little bit of walk animation. So that just made it so much easier. I could have used tack, but using tack on his feet and the lectern, when I'd remove it, it was pulling out the cheese slope pieces. And by the way that this floor is designed, if one cheese slope piece comes out, they all shift, and it's almost impossible to get that piece back in. So I was sweating real hard when I'd accidentally taken 2 of those pieces out, because I had to like quickly nestle them back in there before everything's shifted and I wasn't able to get them back in there to finish animating. So the floor was a hassle, that's for sure. I love these close-up shots. There's just so much drama to it. There's one time in the edit where I cut to a reaction shot just so that I can punch into that close-up shot without it feeling like a jump cut. This shot of I had to do a lot of research about courtrooms because I have no idea. I have no idea. No speaking. We don't get to see much of them, but these little insert shots of it, I feel like just add to the courtroominess. This shot's cool, again, with the fire flickering. I just love how it looks. And it's just 3 frames of animation on loop. And it just works. This may possibly be one of my favorite shots. It just turned out so exceptionally well. I originally had heaps of those flower pieces scattered around. But then when I looked at some of the reference stuff, I think it was like cancer under a microscope is what I was looking at. It was like pulsing, and this turned out much faster than I wanted it to be, but I feel like it works. And like using the flower piece is like a pop to make it feel like that it pops. It looks so cool. It turned out so well. And just these pieces in general, a lot of these 2x4, I have no idea what color piece this is, but these plates, I got heaps of these from the Pick-a-Brick wall, and I was just thinking these have to come in handy. I'll use these someday for some reason, right? So here's one of the use cases for it, and it works really well. Love it. And then we've got the close-up shot, and then him falling out of the chair, or like moving back in the chair and bumps into the desk. Here's another thing that turned out really well, and again, the sound effect just sells it so much, where we've got the breaking. And for 1 frame, 2 frames, because I'm animating this on 2s. We've got this piece. I have no idea where I got this piece, but it's like this dish piece, this transparent dish piece that has these little particles in it. It works so perfect for this shot. It just looked so good. Then we've got the computer with the little sound effect. I'm talking through over this without the sound on. So there's probably stuff that I've missed in the sound design and the dialogue that I want to talk about, but I'm really just talking about the visuals here. But the sound effect here, I love. When I found this sound effect, I knew I wanted to use it somewhere. And it was getting to the end of doing the sound design, and I was like, I still haven't found a place for this where it works, but I just feel like it works here. I haven't talked about the theme yet. So the theme was control for this. And one of the reasons I decided to go with this out of some of the other concepts that I might have wanted to do for BRAWL is the control group and control tests. Because when you think of science, you think, oh, you have the hypothesis of what you think might happen, and then you have a control group so that you can do the experiment, right? So I thought that was a really cool approach to the theme, because when I was looking online in the dictionary at definitions of what control means, I feel like a lot of people would have done the typical use for the word control. So I wanted to sort of break away from that and do something a little different. And this is another shot where I was like, oh, I should just have a close-up shot on the control piece on this computer panel. But this is as close as I could get it. Yeah, it's in the spot where the control piece is, where the control button is on a computer keyboard. So I thought about doing a brick built, really big close-up version of the bottom left side of the keyboard, but I didn't get around to doing that. I didn't have time, and it didn't serve the story at all, so it wouldn't have made sense really. But I colored it yellow, so that's another really, really subtle use of the theme that no one is going to catch, and if you do, good work. So we've got him tapping away at the keyboard, and then the text comes up on screen. Again, this is another visual effects shot where like I've made it so much more difficult on myself for no reason whatsoever to have to mask around him so that the text only appears behind him. Such a pain. Then we've got this shot, again, the physical face replacement. Again, I'm so happy that I went with this headpiece because it gave me so much option when it came to swapping out to the 3 other facial expressions. And it looks so good. It's almost as if that it's done digitally. And then we've got this rack focus shot that I talked about before. I love that Hourglass, the computer, is in the background, right? And it took forever to get it to position so that it lined up right. But to have it behind the digital clock, where we've got like the silhouette almost, like the defined shape, I should say, it's not really a silhouette, of the hourglass behind the digital clock. I just love that bit of imagery so much, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. Then we get the close-up shot of him handcuffed for the first time, right? If you're paying attention, you probably have noticed already that he is in handcuffs. But I feel like this is the first sort of time where you as the audience realize that they think he's the reason she's dead, when in fact he was trying to save her, right? His machine had discovered that she's going to die and tried to do something about it. This stuff is the last stuff that I animated because I knew in my head that if I never got around to animating these 2 shots, the story would work just as well. Like, they're not essential. But I'm glad that I did get around to animating them because I was able to include this Lego check, which I love so much. I spent a lot of time in Photoshop having a lot of fun making this up. I grabbed an image of a check online and just clone stamped a lot of the info out and then just put my own stuff over the top. The torso that he's wearing as well is the doc from Back to the Future. On the back of it, it has like a caution logo. So any of the stuff where you see the back of him, I had to swap out his torso for a different piece so that you wouldn't see that. I didn't really want that caution logo to be on the back of his coat, because then you definitely would know that it's Doc from Back to the Future, his torso. All right, this hallway stuff. So we're back at the hallway. I already had a pain here where I had to do rig removal because he's walking on tile, or in this case, snot, where we're building sideways. So yeah, to have a character walk along here is very difficult without falling over. But he's also running too, so I wanted a couple frames where he's in the air. Yes, I could have done tack and removed it, but that's a really cumbersome way to do it. So I just did my arm holding him up. Not my arm, my animating arm. Animating rig to hold him up. So I had to mask that out. One thing, if you notice really close, in the reflection on the floor, I didn't mask out the rig. So you can see the rig holding him up in the reflection on the floor, which I think is pretty funny. But you're not noticing. You're probably not even noticing that there's rig removal at all because the run is like 2 steps. So it doesn't even happen for very long at all. So this dialogue scene is probably where the most stuff had changed from writing the script to the final edit, because there was a lot more dialogue between the 2 characters. But I felt like it was just repeating stuff that was already said, and the tone in which both actors delivered the lines, I feel like didn't work perfectly. And because of the time constraints of the contest, I didn't want to have them redo the lines to get it to work. It's much more difficult when they're recording lines separately rather than together in a room talking to each other. So yeah, I just cut out a lot of dialogue. It's probably for the better because again, it was a lot of heavy exposition that didn't need to be there. Even though the whole film is just any bit of dialogue is exposition. There's very little dialogue I could cut out and have the point come across still. I'd animated her hitting the floor on the wide shot, but because I got the pacing wrong, it just didn't look like it worked. So I just used this shot of her falling out of frame and the sound effect. I love the on the ground with his knee because Lego figures can't move very much. And so anytime you can pose it and this sort of out of socket animation, the way that I've done it here is so good because it's in a way where there's no tack visible and I'm not moving the character much. So it's not a hassle to animate and it doesn't look horrendous on screen. And then we've got him checking the watch. This is another close-up where we're a brick built. And it turned out so well. I'm so happy with how this shot turned out. I have this Lego piece and I had photographed it as a reference, right? Even though I completely removed it and rebuilt it and put it over the top of the clean plate. But yeah, the ticking of the clock and then the checking of the pulse, all the times in it. So the time here on the clock, I rearranged the arms of the clock to match the digital clock that we saw earlier. I didn't change the numbers on the digital clock. If you have that Lego piece, that's the time that's on there. So I just got really lazy and just, oh, that's the time. That's the time that we're going with. 1 second pass and then he checks the pulse. This is another case where I've used the half Lego arm where I've broken off the bottom part so that I could get his fingers to be a bit closer to the neck so that it looks like he's checking for a pulse. And then there's face replacement here as well. So there isn't a Lego head, at least that I'm aware of, that has this facial expression. Oh, actually, that's a lie. I'll forget everything that I just said then. This is another thing where like it's such a simple visual effect, right? But without it, it just wouldn't be the same. It'd just be her like with her eyes open grinning when she's supposed to be dead. So it's an essential visual effect that it wouldn't be the same without it. Then we have the judge. Thanks to Jay Silver again for being a part of the project. He voices a lot of characters in a lot of projects, and I love noticing it. It's like a little Easter egg. So that I'm glad that my film has that as well. Then walking out with the bed, this was so difficult to animate. So if you ever click a Lego hand into a Lego pole, there's no in between. It's impossible. It's either clicked in all the way or it's sitting on top of it. So this in-between frame from them holding onto the stretcher bed and then here, that's a visual effect. This frame, I had to grab a plate without the bed and then I'd masked their hands over the top so that I could get that transition frame. I almost had to do the same thing with the shovel at the start of the film because there's no in-between the shovel being clicked into the clip or it just being fully out. So it's annoying. That's for sure. And then here's another top-down shot as well. Again, the floor, I just love the floor so much. It turned out so well. Lots of interesting techniques as well from stuff that I've seen online and just reference images that I was going off of real sci-fi places and then translating that look into Lego. It just looks so cool. So again, the top-down shot just works really well for you to just be able to have a look at it. And then we've got the text, right? The Dr. Wendy Bennett for her office. Again, this is something that we don't see anywhere else in the film. I feel like it would have made more sense if we see sort of like the doorway to like her research lab. But yeah, having it here works all right. One of the reasons that I chose Wendy as the first name for this character is the fact that if you cover up some of the letters, it says end, which I really wanted to do. So it was just a name that I picked so that way I could cover it up and end. The gavel hammer slamming down, again, this is another shot where the sound effect just sells it so much. Yeah, this Lego piece, I love that I have this Lego piece. It's such a good piece. You could brick build one and it would probably look just as good, but to have this this mold of this minifigure piece just looks so good. There's a bit of motion blur as well, so that's in camera. So that's me holding the arm that's holding the hammer and then moving it as the exposure's being taken. Might have been a 1 second exposure. Can't remember. Then we have this shot here. This is the only time I got really frustrated while animating because I'd bumped the camera when I was partway through doing this shot. And I'm like, oh, I can never line it back up to where it was. And I didn't want to reanimate what I'd done already because it was a pain because a lot of the characters are really close together. So I chose a different shot. So I'd started animating from this angle. And I was really annoyed because it's very similar to the first shot. So it really feels like a jump cut. So when I was animating it, I was just so upset at the time. I was just like, I just want it to be done. So I only animated a little bit of this and then I just got too annoyed and I was like, all right, we're done here. I've animated enough of this. We have the Bunsen burner shot. Again, I love the parallel with him striking the match and lighting the lantern in the start with the same framing and stuff. I just love the parallel so much. Then we've got the gas. I have no idea what Lego set these these sticker pieces are from, but I'm so glad that I have them because they just work so well in this context. And then we've got the turning of this valve, and then we've got the fire, caution. All these pieces, I'm just like looking through my collection and I'm like, oh, these are white or yellow. So I'll just grab every white and yellow piece that I can find and hopefully integrate it into the set, and it'll also double up as the mod element as well. So these work out well. So these 4 shots tell a little mini story. This shot again, just the same animation done again. I really hate doing that, reusing animation and reusing shots because you can always tell. So I tried to do it as few times as possible, but it was so difficult with such a long runtime. It was just very, very difficult to do such a thing. And there was only really 5 minutes of animation. So the rest of the runtime, it's either looped animation or it's hold frames. I love this shot. I wish the police lights were more prominent. I'd really stitched myself up by using the police built-in effect that flickers the light like police lights. I thought if I did that and took the picture at the right time, it would come up, and it would save me on having to change the light from red to blue each time. It would just be on loop. But it didn't end up working. It wasn't as prominent in the shot as I wanted it, which is unfortunate. But it also doesn't really make sense because we haven't seen any windows. The original idea was there was windows in the science lab so that way I could get sunlight in for some of the shots. And then it would make more sense for the police lights to be here because the police cars would be outside the window. So it's probably better that it's as subtle as it is. It doesn't feel as out of place. But the fire flicker, that's the fire effect, again, built into the LED lights that I have. So that's just flickering different colors of orange and red. There's not much animating going on here. It's just a couple frames that are on loop, and then it's a digital push in. There's enough dolly shots where the camera's physically moving in to where a digital zoom like this doesn't feel as out of place. Got another shot of the computer with the time and the date on it. The time and date, I decided to go with this layout because it's very computer oriented, right? It's the date and the time system that you would see that a computer would have to read. I originally wanted the time zone as well to be after the time as well, but it just would have been extra numbers that probably wouldn't make sense to most people. So I didn't include that. We've got more microscope shots here at the end. I was just having so much fun with the setup that I had that I was like, oh, I just want to grab more Lego pieces that I have and just do more microscope stuff because it was so much fun and they looked so good. So I was just thinking to myself, even if I don't end up using these, I'm just going to animate some more anyway. So I spent like another half an hour just grabbing random Lego bricks and animating them moving around. So I'm glad that I got to incorporate them into it here. The Lego bricks here, I can't remember what the reference image was. I'll put it up on screen here, but it's like blood vessels. And I was imagining if this was on screen under a microscope, they would like expand or contract. And I wanted to do that with this. And it turned out so well with the clicking in of the Lego bricks. Then we've got the close-up of the sand in the hourglass. The original concept was to have the Doctor inside sinking into the sand and reaching out with his hand like he's getting sucked in, but it didn't work story-wise, right? And all the other shots that we have are pretty much grounded in reality, so it would have felt too out of place. So I decided against it. But the close up of the sand, the bits of sand moving, I love how it turned out. And then we've got back to this tighter shot of the one that we had before in the barn of the hourglass, and it just works so well. The music that's happening over this final sequence, I was looking at Reddit, and I was looking through a Reddit thread that was talking about songs that have to do with the end of the world. And I was like, oh, that'd be pretty fitting for my film. So I was looking through a lot of the comments and ended up listening to a lot of them while I was doing the visual effects. And a lot of them were like heavy death metal. But then I finally stumbled upon this piece of music, and it had the banjo playing, and I was about to pass on it. I was about to go, oh, well, this isn't what I was thinking at all for it. But I'm listening to the music, and it's just perfect. It's such a great song. I recommend you listen to it in full because it's got a piano part at the first chorus, or like earlier in the song, that is so good. I wanted to include it somewhere, but I just couldn't find a place for it. But yeah, so I grabbed parts of the song that have no vocals, which again is a shame because a lot of the vocals is what makes it so good. But I wanted the final monologue to really break out through the music. The first time that I put it on the timeline and listened to it and watched it with the visuals of the assembly cut that I had goosebumps. And even after watching it heaps and heaps of times, I still get emotional. Yeah, it just works so well. And I'm so lucky that I found such a great piece of music. Directed by Jacob Shrimpy, so that's me. One of the other things with the contest rules is it says that the titles and end credits don't need to have the mod element present. But I thought it would be funny, and I came up with this idea before BRAWL even started, to have the mod element in the end credits, even though it's not animation. And then I hardly even used the letter mod element of the letter E. If we have a look at the Wendy Bennett sign, I purchased these 1x1 tile round pieces that have all the letters of the alphabet on it, and it's one of the greatest purchases ever because it's great for these contests like Thack and BRAWL because it's got the letter printed on a Lego piece, so it's great to like sneak in. But I hardly even used it. I only used it for that shot, which is unfortunate. I just stuck with the color mod element because some of the shots are just so out of focus. The letter mod element, with it being so small, just wouldn't have been visible in a lot of the shots. So it feels really out of place. If you didn't know about the contest, you would probably be questioning why all the E's are colored in a different color. But I like how it looks and how it turned out. And a lot of the people's names and the words, I'm just so amazed at how many times the letter E appears, and it just makes it look so good. And then we've got characters, which I think is really funny. Usually you would have cast, but I chose to put characters because it's got the letter E in it. And then we've got all the characters have the letter E in it. And then we've got all the actors have the letter E as well. Evie Ree, very funny. When she auditioned for this project, I almost wanted to cast her just based off the fact that it's got Evie Ree, just so many E's. So again, massive thanks to all of the voice actors for contributing to this project. It wouldn't be the same, right? And it's even more difficult for them with the week-long time restraint because they have to do their lines even quicker, right? There's such a small window between me having the script done and ready to send off to them and the time that I need to start animating stuff with their dialogue. Like, it's such a small window. It's 1 or 2 days. So the fact that they're able to be on board for this project and deliver the lines in a timely manner, so exceptional. So thank you again. We have the music. So we've got Possessor, so the soundtrack from the movie. And it just works so well. There's so many parts of that soundtrack that just fit really well. And again, I wanted to use the cello a lot. There's a lot of cello pieces that I have on my computer that I'd put in the assembly cut and thought I wanted to go with because the cello just was an instrument that I feel like really worked for this piece. But I'm glad I went with this choice. And then Seven Swans, just... yeah, again, I'll tell you, when I first listened to this piece of music, it just fit so perfect and it was just magnificent. I love it so much. And then SoundSnap subscription, I wouldn't have been able to do the sound design that I was able to without the SoundSnap subscription. It would have just been such a pain to use a lot of the free sites and YouTube to source music and sound effects. So I'm really glad that I had. It was just such a great way, great search features, and being able to get the right sound effects for it. So the Quiet Extinction logo. I haven't talked about this when we looked at it before. This was one of the first things that I did. So when I wasn't animating or building in the early hours of the contest, and I was at my computer, there was very few things for me to do because I hadn't had anything shot yet. So it was either start building out my timeline and possibly looking for sound effects and music, or doing the end credits. And so I started doing the titles design there. So it started with looking for the right font, and I picked this font because the cues looked really cool, very unique how the cues looked. So I went with that font, and then I started experimenting with like the elongating of parts of the words of the letters. I ended up lining up the T and the N, so I had to squish all these letters together, and then I started extending some other bits, and then I swapped back to the traditional Q, and it ended up working so well. I just can't believe how good it looks with the X going into the Q. It just works so perfectly. I love it. And then it's also got the letter E as well. So we've got the mod element here in the title as well. And then the many brown bricks were broken in the making of this production. That's true. I broke so many because with the courtroom and the barn, using pretty much every brown brick that I own, a lot of it did get broken while I was doing the contest because I had to repurpose some pieces or grab pieces from other Lego sets. And then even more bricks were broken in the disassembly phase after BRAWL was completed. So I'm glad people in the comments picked up on that because it's so small and it's so brief at the end of this film. Not many people watch all the way to the end of YouTube videos. So I'm glad that people picked up on that and found that funny. Because it's a very real struggle that we have as mock builders and as animators, anyone that plays with Lego, just the fact that brittle brown exists, and it's just such a pain because you could just be doing the most simple thing. You could just be taking apart 2 Lego bricks and then it just snaps in half without applying much force at all. So it's unfortunate. And then we have end. I wanted it to be the end. I can't remember why I decided against that. I think because the words the end should appear after the last frame of the film. I feel like at the end of the end credits, it doesn't fit the same. So I went with just end. It's also fitting for the story as well. But yeah. So that's the behind the scenes overview. Hopefully you found it entertaining, interesting. Hopefully you learnt something. So yeah, I'm recording this 2 or 3 weeks after BRAWL. So I've had some time to sit and think and work on other stuff. So it's great to revisit this and talk about the making of and a lot of the problems and challenges and stuff that I had to overcome while making it, because making a film in 7 days is ridiculous, right? To go from start to finish. Even though this is my first BRAWL entry, it's not my first time making a brick film in a week. There's a lot of videos on my YouTube channel that I had created over a week, starting from nothing and then doing set design and animating and then doing the edit on the weekend and then uploading after 7 days. So I'm definitely used to the time pressure of making an animation in such a short time span. But to do it for a contest like BRAWL, and knowing that there's other people also suffering at the same time as me is something else. So I'm really proud of how it came out. I'm interested to see where it places, and I've really enjoyed watching everyone else's BRAWL entries this year. I'm just amazed at the quality that most people are able to create in such a short time span. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.
Start ordering lunch. Yeah, I'm going to have a turkey on rye. Something spicy, maybe.